She offered him more money than he had ever seen, just to wear a ring and lie to the world. Evelyn Cross had built her life on control. At 36, she was the billionaire CEO of Cross Meridian Holdings, a powerhouse investment firm feared in every boardroom that mattered. She was brilliant, elegant, and impossible to intimidate. But after a recent public scandal involving a former executive, the media painted her as cold, unstable, and incapable of loyalty. Weeks before the biggest merger of her career, investors began to worry that her image was too harsh to represent a long-term partnership. Evelyn understood exactly what they meant. They wanted stability, warmth, and the appearance of a personal life that made her look trustworthy. She hated the hypocrisy, but she was too smart to ignore the danger. If perception could save the deal, then she would shape perception herself. The answer appeared where she least expected it, during an inspection of one of her company's luxury properties. In the basement, surrounded by pipes and damaged wiring, she found Noah Bennett repairing a failed utility panel after the building's management had botched the job. He was not polished like the men in her world. He wore a faded work shirt, old boots, and the tired expression of a man carrying too much on his shoulders. But when Evelyn questioned him, he answered with direct honesty, explaining exactly what had been neglected and how much the property managers had overcharged her. He did not flatter her, he did not act impressed, he just told the truth. That alone caught her attention. But what truly stayed with her came minutes later when she saw him outside with his daughter. Little Lily, 6 years old, sat on the curb with a coloring book and a backpack too large for her small frame. The moment Noah came out, her whole face lit up. He crouched in front of her, checked the scrape on her knee, handed her a juice box from his bag, and listened to her chatter like nothing else in the world mattered. Evelyn stood still, watching the scene with sharp, calculating eyes. Noah Bennett looked like something her world could never manufacture. Real. By the next day, her assistant had prepared a file on him. Widower, self-employed repairman, raising his daughter alone since his wife's death. No scandals, no criminal record, no hidden trouble. Just inconsistent income, medical bills from Lily's earlier illness, and a quiet reputation for pride and hard work. To Evelyn, he looked like the perfect solution. She invited him to her office under the excuse of discussing a long-term maintenance contract. Noah arrived tense and clearly uncomfortable in the sleek tower that carried her name, but he remained steady. Evelyn wasted no time. She explained the merger, the damage to her public image, and the need for a temporary arrangement that would make investors see her as stable and grounded. Then she made the offer. Pretend to be her husband for a few weeks, attend events, appear in photographs, and help sell the illusion of a family life. In return, she would pay him enough money to erase his debts and secure Lily's future. Noah stared at Evelyn in disbelief. Then he let out a bitter laugh and stood. He asked if she really thought he would sell his name to fix one of her business problems. Evelyn replied that she thought he was a practical man with a daughter to think about. That was when his expression hardened. He told her not to use Lily as leverage. Evelyn, unused to being challenged by anyone outside a boardroom, kept her voice calm, but Noah was already done. He called the offer a lie dressed up as rescue and walked out. Yet that night, in his small rented house, Noah sat at the kitchen table staring at the number Evelyn's assistant had left in a sealed envelope. It was more money than he had ever seen in one place, enough for school, savings, and security, enough to give Lily the future he was terrified he could not provide alone. When he looked at his daughter asleep on the couch with crayons scattered beside her, his pride began to lose its battle with reality. The next morning, he returned to Evelyn's office, exhausted and defeated, and told her he would do it. But before she could celebrate, he made one thing clear. She would never control him, and Lily came first, always. If the arrangement hurt Lily in any way, he would walk away. Evelyn agreed without hesitation, believing she was only securing a business arrangement. But neither of them understood that the little girl at the center of the bargain would soon change everything.
At first, the arrangement felt less like a marriage and more like a quiet war, fought in expensive clothes and carefully staged smiles. Noah moved into Evelyn Cross's penthouse with Lily under a strict schedule designed by assistants, stylists, and public relations consultants who treated every dinner, photograph, and public appearance like part of a corporate campaign. Evelyn insisted on control over everything: their seating at charity galas, the way Noah should place his hand at her waist for cameras, the stories they would tell about how they met, even the tone of his smile when investors were present. Noah hated all of it. He hated the polished lies, the rehearsed affection, and the way Evelyn spoke about emotions as if they were just another weakness to manage. He followed the plan only because the money meant security for Lily, but he refused to let Evelyn command him like one of her employees. Their private conversations quickly turned into arguments. He told her she treated people like machinery. She accused him of making everything harder out of stubborn pride. He mocked the cold emptiness of the penthouse, where every object looked expensive and nothing looked loved. She reminded him that her world required discipline, not chaos. Yet somehow, in public, their tension created exactly the image investors wanted. The photographs looked intense, intimate, and strangely believable. Reporters who had once called Evelyn unreachable began describing her as composed, grounded, even softer in the presence of her husband and his charming little daughter. The merger team noticed the shift almost immediately, and for the first time in weeks, the pressure on Evelyn's board began to ease. But behind closed doors, the act remained fragile, except where Lily was concerned. Lily did not care about the money, the cameras, or the merger. She only cared that the enormous penthouse felt lonely, that Evelyn rarely sat still long enough to finish a meal, and that she always looked tired, even when she was dressed perfectly. Unlike adults, Lily was not intimidated by wealth or reputation. She wandered into Evelyn's world with crayons in her hands and questions in her heart. She asked why Evelyn worked while eating breakfast. She asked why there were no family pictures in the apartment. She asked if big windows made a person feel less alone at night. At first, Evelyn responded with awkward politeness, clearly unprepared for the curiosity of a 6-year-old who saw straight through polished surfaces. But Lily kept trying. She left little drawings near Evelyn's desk. She offered to share cookies from her school lunchbox. She asked if Evelyn wanted to hear the story of her stuffed rabbit, Mr. Wobbles, who helped her feel brave when she got scared. Noah noticed it happening before Evelyn did. His daughter was slipping through the billionaire's defenses in tiny, ordinary ways, turning cold rooms warmer simply by existing in them. One rainy evening, the shift became impossible to ignore. Noah had been delayed by a call from his landlord, leaving Evelyn unexpectedly alone with Lily for nearly an hour. At first, Evelyn looked visibly uncomfortable, seated stiffly on one side of the giant living room while Lily colored on the rug nearby. But when thunder rattled the windows, Lily startled and looked up with wide eyes. Evelyn moved before thinking, sitting beside her and quietly telling her it was only a storm. Lily studied her for a moment, then held out Mr. Wobbles with complete seriousness. "You can hold him. He helps when people feel sad." Evelyn froze, as if the small, worn rabbit were something fragile and sacred. No one had offered her comfort in years. No one had spoken to her as if sadness were something allowed. For a long second, she said nothing, then carefully took the rabbit in both hands. When Noah returned, he stopped in the doorway at the sight of the two of them on the couch, Lily leaning against Evelyn's arm, Evelyn holding the stuffed rabbit as if she didn't quite know why her throat felt tight. Neither of them noticed him at first. Something in that moment unsettled him more than all their arguments had, because it no longer looked like a simple arrangement. It looked personal. After that night, the atmosphere in the penthouse changed in ways none of them openly admitted. Evelyn still corrected Noah in public and argued with him in private, but there were cracks in her control now. She began asking Lily about school. She came home earlier some evenings. Once, Noah even caught her smiling, really smiling, when Lily insisted on teaching her how to braid a doll's hair. The merger was moving forward. The public believed the lie, and everything was going according to plan. But beneath the rehearsed image and business strategy, something far more dangerous had started to grow. The little girl Noah had sworn to protect was slowly becoming the heartbeat of Evelyn's silent world, and for the first time in years, the woman who controlled everything was beginning to feel something she could not manage at all. By the third week, the lie had become so polished that even Noah sometimes forgot where the performance ended. Their photographs were everywhere now, at charity dinners, investor luncheons, and elegant rooftop events where Evelyn Cross stood in tailored gowns beside the rugged single father who somehow made her look less like an untouchable empire and more like a woman with something real to lose. The public loved them, the board relaxed, and the merger finally began moving in the right direction. But inside the penthouse, the changes ran deeper than any press strategy could have predicted. Lily had filled the sleek, silent apartment with the kind of life money could never buy. Her crayons appeared on marble countertops, her storybooks gathered on the designer sofa, and her laughter echoed through rooms that had once only known phone calls and polished footsteps. Evelyn resisted it at first, then slowly stopped resisting it all. She began sitting with Lily at breakfast instead of answering emails through every meal. She asked about spelling tests, tied loose shoelaces, and once even canceled a late meeting just to attend Lily's small school recital, standing awkwardly in the back with sunglasses on as if she could hide how deeply it mattered to her. Noah noticed every change, even the ones Evelyn tried to disguise. He saw how she lingered near Lily's bedroom door at night just to hear her talking to her stuffed rabbit before sleep. He saw the softness in her face when Lily ran to greet her after school. Most of all, he saw the loneliness in Evelyn more clearly than ever before, because once she let warmth in, the emptiness she had been living with became impossible to ignore. One night after a high-profile gala, they returned to the penthouse exhausted, the city glowing beneath them in cold silver light. Lily was already asleep in the guest room, and for the first time in days, the apartment was quiet. Evelyn removed her earrings at the kitchen counter with the distant expression she wore when something had slipped beneath her armor. Noah loosened his tie and asked what was wrong. At first, she said nothing, but eventually the words came. At the gala, she had overheard two investors discussing her transformation. They were pleased with the merger again, not because they respected her more, but because having a husband and child beside her made her seem human enough to trust. The comment had cut deeper than she wanted to admit. For a moment, all the old bitterness rose in her, the old belief that her power made her difficult to love, that every room would always measure her worth by how well she could soften herself for other people's comfort. Noah listened without interrupting, then told her quietly that power had never been her problem. Loneliness was. The words struck her with a force no insult ever had. He was the first person in years who had looked at her life and seen the wound instead of the weapon. When she turned to him, all her practiced control was gone. The silence between them changed, becoming too intimate, too honest, too dangerous to ignore. Their first kiss was nothing like the rehearsed touches they had faked for cameras. It was hesitant at first, shaped by weeks of resistance, tension, and truths neither of them had meant to feel. But once it happened, it carried the weight of everything they had tried to deny. For one fragile moment, the arrangement stopped being an arrangement at all. It became something real, and that was exactly when everything began to fall apart. 2 days later, a gossip site published an anonymous story suggesting Evelyn's marriage was staged for business reasons. At first, it seemed like another rumor, but by afternoon, major outlets had picked it up, connecting timelines, questioning the speed of the relationship, and reviving every cruel headline from the earlier scandal. Evelyn's board erupted in panic. Lawyers flooded her office. Advisors demanded tighter appearances, controlled statements, and immediate damage control. The merger, so close to completion, was suddenly trembling again. But Noah's fear had nothing to do with money or headlines. He saw Lily's face on one news segment, smiling innocently beside them, and something inside him locked into place. He had agreed to lie for her future, not to drag her into public humiliation. When reporters began gathering outside the building, he made his decision in silence. He would stay long enough to help Evelyn survive the crisis and close the deal, but the moment it was over, he and Lily would leave. It did not matter how real the feelings had become, or how much the thought of walking away hurt. He had promised his daughter would come first, and now that promise demanded a price. Evelyn, buried beneath crisis meetings and media strategy, sensed him pulling away before she understood why. The warmth between them cooled, replaced by an ache neither of them could name aloud. And as the merger approached its final hours, both of them were forced to face the same terrifying truth. The business lie that had started as a contract had become the most real relationship either of them had known, and it might be ending just as they had finally stopped pretending.
The merger closed on a gray Friday morning beneath a storm of cameras, legal signatures, and applause that sounded hollow to the three people who had once turned a lie into something dangerously close to a home. On paper, Evelyn Cross had won everything she had fought for. Her board was satisfied, the investors were secure, the scandal had been contained just enough to protect the company, and the billion-dollar deal that would define her legacy was finally complete. Every news outlet praised her recovery, her discipline, and the polished image of stability she had managed to present at exactly the right time. But when the final handshakes ended and the conference room emptied, Evelyn felt no victory at all. She stood alone beside the wall of glass in her office, staring at the city beneath her, and understood with brutal clarity that the one thing she had needed most was the one thing the contract could not guarantee. Down in the penthouse, Noah was already packing. He moved quietly, folding Lily's clothes, gathering her books, and placing Mr. Wobbles gently into a side pocket of her small pink suitcase. He told himself he was doing the right thing. The money Evelyn had paid him would change Lily's future. Her school would be secure. Their debts would be gone. He had done what he came to do. And yet, every object he picked up from that apartment felt heavier than it should have, because the place no longer felt like a stage set. It felt lived in. It felt like bedtime stories, breakfast laughter, and the strange, fragile peace of watching Evelyn sit cross-legged on the floor while Lily explained how to color inside the lines. That was what made leaving hurt so much. If it had all stayed fake, walking away would have been easy. But it had not stayed fake. Somewhere between the investor dinners, the arguments, the rainstorm on the couch, and the late-night confessions neither of them had planned to speak, the lie had turned real. No one knew it. Evelyn knew it. Even Lily knew it in the simple, fearless way children know truths adults spent too long trying to avoid. Lily was the one who made the goodbye unbearable. She did not cry at first. She sat on the edge of the bed, hugging Mr. Wobbles and watching her father zip the last suitcase with the serious expression she wore when she was trying very hard to be brave. "Are we leaving because the pretend is over?" she finally asked. Noah swallowed hard and knelt in front of her, brushing a curl back from her forehead. He told her some things were only meant for a little while, and that what mattered was being thankful for them. But Lily looked unconvinced. Her small voice dropped to a whisper. "It didn't feel pretend to me." Those words followed him like a wound. Before they left, Lily slipped away without him noticing and padded into Evelyn's study, where the billionaire CEO sat at her desk pretending to read a contract she had not truly seen for 10 minutes. Without saying much, Lily placed a folded drawing on the desk and kissed Evelyn's cheek. Then she hurried out before the tears in her own eyes could fall. Evelyn unfolded the paper slowly. It was a picture in crayon of 3 figures standing hand in hand beneath a bright yellow sun. Noah, Lily, and Evelyn, all smiling in the crooked, wholehearted way children draw the people they love. Across the top, in uneven letters, Lily had written, "You can still be my family, even if you're scared." Evelyn stared at the words until her vision blurred. In boardrooms, she had faced billion-dollar risks without trembling. She had survived betrayal, public humiliation, and years of loneliness by mastering the art of never needing anyone. But that simple sentence from a little girl broke through every defense she left. By the time Noah reached the lobby with the bags in hand and Lily beside him, Evelyn was already running after them, not as a CEO, not as a strategist, not as a woman protecting an image, but as herself. Her heels struck the marble hard enough to echo, and when Noah turned, he saw something he had never seen in her before: fear without armor. She stopped in front of them breathless, her voice shaking despite every effort to steady it. She told him she could let deals go, survive scandals, and rebuild reputations, but she did not think she could survive watching them walk away. She admitted that somewhere along the way, Lily had made her feel more at home than any penthouse, award, or empire ever had. Then she looked at Noah, and all the truth she had fought spilled out at once.
She told him she loved his daughter. She told him she loved him, too. She told him she was done pretending, done calculating, done treating her heart like a risk to be managed. Noah stared at her in stunned silence, because for weeks he had feared that once the merger ended, he would simply become unnecessary. But there was nothing cold or strategic in the woman standing before him now. She was not asking him to stay for appearances. She was asking him to stay because losing him would break her. Noah set the suitcases down. For a second long, neither of them moved. Then Lily, who had clearly decided the adults had wasted enough time, stepped between them, grabbed both their hands, and pushed them together with a watery smile. That was all it took. Noah pulled Evelyn into his arms, and for the first time there were no cameras, no investors, and no script telling them how to stand. There was only relief, truth, and the quiet miracle of being chosen without conditions. In the weeks that followed, the headlines moved on. The merger became old news, and Cross Meridian continued to thrive. But the real ending was never written in financial reports. It lived instead in the penthouse that no longer felt cold, in the breakfast table where 3 plates were set every morning, and in the woman who once offered money for a fake husband, only to discover that the only deal worth keeping was the family she never planned to find. And for Noah, the struggling single father who entered her life for her daughter's future, the greatest reward was not the check that changed their circumstances, but the love that changed all 3 of their lives forever.
If you loved this emotional story of fake marriage, family, and unexpected love, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for Drew Daily Stories, because your next favorite story is waiting.